Welcome back to the Community Strategy Podcast. I'm Deb Shell, your host here, and I've interviewed over 100 community leaders, business owners, and facilitators who give you the backstage pass to their community strategy. I'm a creator turned community builder, and after failing my launch in 2020, I discovered I had a passion for community events, cultivating belonging, and developing a strategy for success. As the author of Creator to Community Builder, Find calm while building your online community, I encourage you to dig deep and go beyond the surface level marketing and understand your ideal member. As a community and marketing strategist, I've helped over 70 business owners in developing and implementing a launch plan for an online community course or membership. On this podcast, I share interviews with community builders just like you who have a message and who want to bring a group of humans together for a purpose. You are invited to join Community Builders with Purpose to connect with like-minded people who want to learn how to run, manage, and grow an online community. The community is free, so I hope you can join. It's a new place to share your community concept, ask questions about community building, and connect with us for an intentional community development strategy. Our members join programs and special events to continue learning and growing. The community is an ecosystem, a place where you can join no matter what stage you're in, beginner, intermediate, or advanced. I hope to see you inside. Now let's get started. Hey there, this is Deb. I am jumping in before we start this podcast and letting you know that this is our first episode back, season 3. So jumping in to season 3, and I'm excited to share with you this episode. It is a recording of a live stream that we did during International Women's Day, and a few panelists are there. And I do have the information of the panelists in the show notes. So definitely check that out and the links that they provided for us for additional resources around supporting women. We wanted to celebrate International Day, and I wanted to do something really special to launch the podcast. And so this ended up being like the perfect solution. So today what you're going to hear is either part one or part 2 of the recording, because it is an hour. And so my goal is to create podcast episodes between 20 and 30 minutes for season 3. So what we're going to do is you're going to hear half of the conversation. You're going to have to wait. You're going to have to be patient until next week. And next week, you'll get to hear part 2. If you just heard part 2, please go back and watch part 1, because these women are amazing, inspiring, and just celebrating International Women's Day, something I wanted to do for a really long time. And I'm so thankful that I was able to bring these women together for this conversation. Coming up this season, you are going to hear some amazing recordings of live interviews through the Community Builders with Purpose. Now, if you're not familiar, this is a brand new community that I just launched in 2024. So it hasn't been around that long. Right after I wrote my book and published it, Community Builders with Purpose had just launched in January, after the launch of my book, Creator to Community Builder, Find Calm While Building Your Online Community. It's available on Amazon. But I won't go any further. I'll let you jump into this episode, but I hope you enjoy it. Please leave us a rating or a review. Let us know what you think about these kind of episodes. And I can't wait to share with you more episodes and recordings from Community Builders with Purpose. So, and you can join me and talk with me and these other women. Enjoy the episode. My name's Deb. Welcome and happy International Women's Day. Yay for women. It's a great day. I have wanted to do an event for International Women's Day for years and years, and I'm thankful that I get to do it today. What I'm going to share here is a couple of things about the speakers that are here today in the room. And then I'm just going to give a quick intro for each of those, and then we're going to get started with our questions that I set up for us to kind of kick us off some discussions. Hopefully Maria will be joining us shortly. I do see 2 people in the waiting room, so I'm afraid because I don't know if it's a spam bot. So we're going to leave that person in the room. I'm sorry, Quinta. I'm just not sure. Okay, so First up, Serena Snowd is the founder of Good Community. She's a consultant helping, and Serena, wave for us so they know who you are.
Hello.
She's a consultant helping community professionals protect and improve well-being and build ethical and practical online communities. She has 15 years of experience in building, scaling, and leading online communities. Jenny K. Pollock co-founded the Woman and AI podcast and the community focused on advancing AI by amplifying women's voices. Jenny's superpower is that she's driving monetization through strategy for B2C software companies. That's business to consumer. And Maria, we're going to skip Maria because she's going to be joining us. She had some tech issues. Teresa Anderson is a dynamic marketing leader and a captivating speaker who brings unparalleled expertise and energy to any stage, including this one today. With this career spanning SaaS, HR, education, she has mastered translating complex go-to-market ideas into actionable, relevant strategies. And last but not least, CJ is an AI ethics and data protection advocate. She is her role as an data ethics and governance AI working group chair at MIA, which is Mission Impact Academy, and her position as head of international relations at Women in AI Africa, further underscoring her influence and dedication to empowering women in technology. So welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to try to see if I can get Maria on our call, but I want to start first by saying, why did you, before we get into the other questions, I wanted to just ask, and we can popcorn these things. So if you feel something that comes to you, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine too. But why did you decide you wanted to participate in International Women's Day today?
I'm happy to jump in. I've had so many women be inspirational in my career, both getting me started and both keeping me going. So I am excited to talk to these smart women. That's probably 90% of it. And to you, because you know, Deb, I love you. But also to mark this day and really celebrate women's voices. That's my primary thing.
Yeah, and I can jump right in behind Teresa. And I could say ditto, but absolutely. The opportunity to talk about some of the individuals that have really inspired me is a great opportunity, and especially today on International Women's Day. And so, loving the panel, loving yourself, Deb. I can't wait to interact with all of you today.
I can jump in. I decided to participate because I couldn't think of a better way to spend International Women's Day than connecting with all of you amazing women and learning alongside you, and of course, reaching out to Deb's audience. So I'm really excited to be here and to celebrate the day with you.
And I completely agree with much of what's been said. I think for me, appreciation matters more than anything else, and particularly when we're part of our identity might be marginalized, and as women we might be facing exclusion, we might be facing challenges, and we know that that's part of the reality of being a woman. And so I think it's really helpful that for us to talk about inclusion and why that's so important, and to also talk about the people who inspire us, and to aim to be people who will inspire others. So I think for me, being part of that conversation is really important. And yeah, very happy to be here from England.
I want to jump in and say, like, I echo everything that everyone said. And, in my role as a trauma therapist, I spend a lot of time being present with the pain of so many women. And I see sort of the personal expressions of the ways in which the marginalization and the just the silencing of our emotional lives and needs are, that for me, I had a very strong urge to be present on this day with more of like the camaraderie and the community and the connection and the sisterhood, because it can be so challenging to sort of be with the weight of that all the time. And it's been really like I wanted to connect with the more joyful sides of being a woman and the good things about us, and to have something to focus on in that regard.
So great. I think everybody shared, but I'm just so glad that all of you came and showed up today. And so I want to kick off our conversation by starting to think a little bit about a time in your life when you met a woman and immediately was inspired by her courage, strength, her empathy, her resilience, or her grit. I've many stories of women that I've met, especially one that's here right now, Teresa, because she's been an inspiration to me as when I met her, and just such a positive experience. So I wanted to just shout you out because I love you and you're so amazing.
You too, Deb. It's a mutual love fest, which is, I have to say, something I find with women. I find that women are really good. Like it's a real feminine energy to bring a woman into your circle and then be really reciprocal. I feel like that's such a strong quality that women have, and the ability, Deb, to lift you up and then you in turn lift me up. That's such a wonderful thing to celebrate in this, even beyond just a specific woman who's inspired me. That for me is that's what makes it great.
Yeah, I mean, I can chime in here as well. I think, which goes hand in hand with what you're saying, Teresa. I just from beginning to end, our scars become our stories, and that is an inspiration to other women. When I think of this question, it's very difficult because there are so many women. I mean, if you're a woman, you have a story, right? And if you know that woman's story, it's likely to inspire you in some way. But when I think of this question, it's two people that I'd like to mention. One, we've already lost them, and that's Dr. Maya Angelou. I had an opportunity as a teenager to interview Dr. Maya Angelou. I was about 17 years of age. I had no idea the magnitude of that experience at all at that time. But as a writer myself, the ways that I was inspired by that experience in so many profound ways. From her character alone, I remember thinking that she is larger than life. But, now as an older person, I understand that's how big her character was, right? That she was that confident. She took over the room. And so definitely, that is an example of someone who inspired me. And the last one, really quickly, not a woman as yet, my 10-year-old niece, Femi J. She was diagnosed with lupus a few years ago, and I have watched her experience things that many grown women would struggle with, from hair loss to long periods in the hospital, both in Bermuda and abroad. But she is the deputy head girl and prefect at her primary school. She's the captain of the primary school sports team. She is an example of women today, young people today, that are going to be the women of tomorrow, doing the same things that we are talking about and the same types of conversations. We would hope that they would be able to take them further along. So thank you for allowing me to share. Those are two extremely inspirational women in my life.
So I was able to meet an inspirational woman the other week, actually at AMIA, the Mission Impact Academy AI Summit. And her name is Marissa McNeilans. She's the CEO and founder of Toast. And Toast is using AI to remove bias in the hiring process. And I was just floored by all of the things that Toast takes into account as they try and remove that bias from hiring. And I was just instantly captivated by her and her product. And I believe it's something that will drive diversity in tech and beyond. And so I'm really excited to see how some of these new tools and technologies are actually helping make things more equal and more fair and more equitable.
I think that is a great insight. And there is something about that fairness and that equitability. It's such an important thing when we think about, positive values. Looking at that list that you sent over, Deb, I was looking at that question for a long time. I was thinking there's so many things: courage, strength, empathy, resilience, and grit. It shows up in so many women. It's such a huge, when I think about women, it's such a huge part of being a woman can often be about resilience and about empathy and about strength. And so it sort of sent my mind towards thinking about nurture and thinking about women who show up and care. And I've been involved in leading caring communities and health communities for most of my career. And so for me, I really think there's a group of women that we don't really recognise and we don't really talk about a lot. And primarily they are women, and they are unpaid volunteer moderators in online spaces. And primarily that role is done by women across the web, whether it's Facebook groups, whether it's forums. You'll usually, there are certain areas where you'll find more men, but more often than not, the women that show up to do the work of empathy and supporting others in that online space are usually women. So I wanted to thank them. They're often unpaid and unrecognised for the work that they do, and it's the hard stuff. It's dealing with the toxic waste of the web, and it's also, you know, creating safe spaces for people and being people who show up with positive intent in online spaces. So I think for me, that's who I wanted to pay tribute to today.
In my life, I have a very close personal relationship, a friend of mine who's really inspired me. Her name is Christina, and I met her at church. It was kind of like a serendipitous thing. She is the child of a very close family friend of my husband, and it was just kind of like a serendipitous meeting of her in my life, and it really fundamentally changed me as a human, just knowing her and developing a close friendship with her over the years. And I've gotten the opportunity, because she's, you know, become a close friend, to see her fighting breast cancer really valiantly, to see her working with the homeless, because she works in a homeless shelter, and how she shows up to that work and the meaningfulness of that. And, you know, as close family friends, to see her as a mother, as a grandmother, and to like observe her approach to some really, really difficult life circumstances when we talk about grit, and just to always be able to find some kernel of joy and happiness and peace to reflect on and to connect to. And in my own life, that was always something that when things happened for me, that I would get hung up on things, or it would be hard for me to sort of let go of pains and hurts, and just watching her sort of navigate some really difficult life circumstances, and the sort of like, well, this is how this is going to serve me, and this is how I can find this one thing that's a blessing in this really difficult situation. Like, you know, yeah, I have breast cancer, but you know, I have all these supporters that are here to like cook dinners for me and do all this stuff, and just to be able to find that just joy in life, no matter what life throws at you. And that has really inspired me. She's inspired me sort of personally, and just how she shows up to her life, but also how she shows up to her work. And just I feel such a tremendous like debt of gratitude for her just being there for me as a friend, and just that like community that sort of springs up around her and every woman. Like, one of the things that I think is so like amazing about women is our capacity to like create community, like Deb in her role of connecting all of us together, and just to be able to create this connection, these connections. Like we are the web. We are the web. You know, of the world, really. Like, without women, like, think about how many families where a woman dies and the relationships with the extended family just goes to you know what. It's like, you know, why? Because we're that glue, that cohesion of connection across the world.
Speaking of connection, thinking about I was trying to do a good segue, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, that was a good segue into the conversation around being inclusion.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah. If you wish, Deb, you know, women, we just need to be included as often as we can in every field and endeavor. You know, it's about the diverse perspectives. So I have an appreciation for Melissa and what she was saying there. You know, in my field, and the same with Jenny, and I think a few others on the call, is AI, technology, and data protection, where women are hugely underrepresented. and that underrepresentation of women in these fields, I mean, it's going to lead to some major concerns in the future in terms of innovation, in terms of biases and workplace inequality and all sorts. And so there is definitely an important space for every woman, diverse individual to have a voice as we continue to work together to build the future. So I agree with Melissa. We are the web. You can't have the world without us. So there you go, Deb. A great segue.
Unless men all of a sudden start to figure out a way to have children on their own. I don't know.
Well, listen, I don't think that's going to happen in this time.
Genetically. We figured that out genetically recently, but they still need a womb to stick the baby in.
and listen, even without childbearing, women bring very unique characteristics just by, I think, that web idea. We are relationship drivers. We connect dots. The studies that have been done, there are strengths. Everybody has brain strengths, right? Everybody has their unique gifts. And there are a distinct set of those that I think really well line up with modern business. I think you're seeing women meteorically rise in certain leadership areas, really shooting up. I think it's because of those relationship building, diverse thinking and connecting of dots that is such a strength when you're trying to run an org. I think I've seen the statistics that women run orgs outperform in a lot of key metrics. But I think for that reason, I think that is the big superpower.
Absolutely. And to go off of that, when women are on boards, the organizations actually make more money, more revenue. So not only is it the right thing to do to have a diverse audience on your board and in your leadership, it's also the right thing for the bottom line. And so everything's lining up. And I really hope we continue to elevate women at different levels of leadership. But one thing that I wanted to share is a seat at the table isn't enough. Even when you have that seat, you can get talked over, you can get ignored, you can get passed over. And so to combat that, one of the things I like to do is to invite other women to join me and to bring them up with you. So as you're going up, lift them up, whether that's at work or in a side project. A really good example of that is actually Deb today. You invited all of us here to speak, and that's what it's all about, is bringing more women in and including them in what you're working on and amplifying their voices. So thank you, Deb. I really appreciate you bringing us all together today.
You're welcome. I am glad. And we have so many just from different places. If everybody wants to kind of share where they're calling from today, because I don't know that we said that while we were doing the recording. So I'm from Central Pennsylvania. Who wants to share next?
I'm from Key West, so down the very bottom of Florida, in a little tiny island in the dot in the ocean.
And I'm from Bermuda, not too far from Florida. I'm from Bermuda.
I'm calling in from San Francisco, Silicon Valley area.
I'm also
I'm sorry. I'm also from Central Pennsylvania, probably up the street from Deb.
And Serena?
Yeah, I'm from just outside London in England. So it's just gone 5 p.m. here. So heading towards evening.
Wonderful. And Maria, welcome. I'm so glad you were able to join us, and you were having some tech issues, but welcome. So glad you're here. Any other thoughts about inclusion or how we can cultivate more inclusion within our sisterhood, like womanhood, like thinking about how we can help each other become more inclusive and in the spaces that we're in too? Because I think I've struggled with this a lot because Central PA, for people who aren't familiar, we don't have a lot of diversity here. It's pretty much all kind of the same people. I mean, we have some, but we don't have nearly like what Philadelphia or New York or Washington, D.C. have. So
it's growing. It's growing, but the mindsets often stay the same. So far. So we have to, those of us that have been here a while, we remember this history, and we have to speak up and be bold and try to maybe open doors for for people that are coming in.
So what I wanted to say something about this because I'm coming from I'm a first generation American. I grew up in a non-English speaking household, and growing up as a little girl from an immigrant family, and being in so many spaces that there was like all this sort of cultural information, that there was so much jargon and terminology that was so unfamiliar to me, and that was a sort of way that communicated to me in so many different ways, from other women, from men, from just spaces of authority at school, where I just didn't feel like I resonated and didn't feel like I could speak because I just didn't have the right words to say that would allow me to feel like I belonged or that I was appropriate for the space. And I think there's so many ways in so many different fields, in so many different environments that are very jargon heavy, that we don't challenge this, but jargon is sort of a way to create in groups and out groups. And so I know in my whole life that, even especially transitioning from a stay-at-home mom to a professional, that I was often in so many environments that were so jargon heavy that like I had to be like, hey guys, this is in social work, like I work in social work, like we're an inclusive community, right? We're supposed to be creating inclusivity. We're supposed to be the drivers of inclusivity. Well, you guys have a lot of terminology here that's leaving me feeling like an outsider, and like I don't even know what you guys are talking about or how to contribute what I have to say to this discussion, because it seems like I have to put it into the right sort of package. And I just don't come from a space that allows me to have the language that can interface with you in a way that makes me feel a part of things.
Melissa, what I get from that, how I often see this is the difference between diversity and inclusion, right? You can have a diverse group of people. I often like to joke and say, have you ever been invited to a dinner party or any type of, it could be a family event, but no one talks to you, right? No one engages with you. That is the difference. If you can feel it more than sometimes you can see it, right? And I just think, yeah, like we just have to move away from societies of judgment, just really being stuck on judging each other, and move more into mindsets of acceptance and understanding. We're all different. We all want to be accepted. You can go anywhere in the world and you will not fit in some circles. And so we can all experience what that is like. And so it's important for us to, challenge and do our part to try to change some of the societal norms that you're talking about, Melissa. Going into new jurisdictions or moving location, often you can come into a community that is not as welcoming. So they want diversity, and then you might even check the list, right? We need diversity. But they're not inclusive in any way, And so really looking at, in my opinion, having really open and honest conversations like this is so important. So our voices are heard. And, even though we think we're being inclusive, sometimes we're not. And we don't know until we listen to the person who feels excluded tell us. And I had that experience when I was just in Kenya. I was with friends. We, were having a great time. But there were often times when I just, I was trying to understand terminology or understand things. And I just felt like the talking was just right over me, right? And so I went quiet. And a friend noticed that. And she said, what's going on? And I felt safe enough to express myself. They had no idea that they were doing that at all. So sometimes we have to have grace too, to tell people, because we can be passive aggressive and feel that we don't need to tell people that they have offended us. But how would they know if that is their culture, if that's their background, if that's their norm? And so there's a lot of controversy around that in terms of what people should know. But I look at it like a spectrum. Some people know a lot, some people know a little. How else would we have change unless we talk about it? So that's just my piece. I'll go on mute.
Yeah, I wish I could give you a round of applause for that, CJ, because I was just thinking so much of what you're saying is similar to the things that I've been experiencing in the charity sector, non-profit sector in the UK, where I've worked for 20 years. And over here we call it EDI, and I recognise across the pond we changed the letters around. I'm sure other countries call it different things, but I think for me the idea of diversity, equality, or equity actually, inclusion and belonging, because belonging is the newer idea that seems to be being spoken about more, and I think actually all four of those are needed to tackle this systemic exclusion. And some folks in the non-profit sector, we've been getting a bit tired of it, this EDI being kind of tick box exercises and feeling like it's tokenistic, or we do just enough to kind of like skirt through whatever controversy organizations might be facing. And that's not just the non-profit sector, that's the for-profit sector as well. But this idea of ultimately this is about power. Ultimately this is about who do you see, who do you value, and why. And from the context of talking about women, we don't just have to talk about women, we can talk about all different groups in society that might be marginalized and excluded. And I want to include people from the trans community. There's a horrible story in the UK you may have heard of. I won't go into details. That there was a horrible story that's been in the news, and the idea that someone could be murdered by other children simply for having a different identity. It's appalling to think about. But this idea of actually, this is dangerous stuff. If we take exclusion to extremes, people are really at risk, and it can show up in all sorts of ways. We talk about microaggressions, and I'm sure many of us have experienced some of those, as women, or other aspects of our identity. But this idea of actually the small little things that can happen through life that make us feel intentionally or otherwise, and it is right to say some of it is accidental, but intentionally or otherwise, this exclusion, this othering, this I don't want to hear you, I don't value, I don't see you, that's a lot of what's happening here. And unpacking that and moving away from these scarcity mindsets and these fixed mindsets, and it's a lot of it's about fear and about control, I think, ultimately. But there's a lot of courage. The flip side of it, we're talking about that courage to speak out and the courage to be willing to learn. And I'm sure I've got things wrong and I've said things wrong in the past, but it's that willingness to show concern to other people, to make space for other people. There's more than enough room at the table, as we all know, but it's the idea of actually sometimes you've got to bring your own chair, maybe elbow somewhere along so that you can sit down. But let's see what we can do about that. But there's so much more we could say about that, but this idea of ultimately, it's about inclusion, it's about power, and it's about, action. So let's see what we can do, folks.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Community Strategy Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you're following or subscribed wherever you listen. This helps me because I know you won't miss an episode, and it helps you because you will always get the episodes right away. This podcast is produced by myself, Deb Schell, independent owner of Find Calm Here. If you really enjoyed this episode, I am looking for some Apple Podcast reviews. I'm going to explain to you how to do that right now. First, if you go to your Apple Podcast and click on the circle with the 3 dots on the top right corner, then make sure you're following the show. Second, next click Go to Show and scroll down to where it says ratings and reviews. Then right above About, you will see a little square with a pencil. Next to the square, you'll see Write a Review. Make sure you save the review before closing out your screen. I would love if you could do that for me. If you don't want to say anything nice, then don't leave a review. I hope that you enjoy this podcast and this season, and I hope you're finding calm in any day, even today or tomorrow, any day, moment, even afternoon. Today, Saturday at 4. Find calm until the next time. Take care. Bye.